Quilty is brought to you by APQS, handcrafted quilting machines. Aurifil Italian thread, perfectly suited for all your quilting projects. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Clothworks, inspiring creativity with art on fabric. Havel's Sewing, when you need to cut it close, choose Havel's. B&B, our fabrics, your lifestyle. Quiltology, the urban quilt space.
Quilty.
If you've ever wanted to try a curved seam but have been too freaked out that it was too hard, today's Blocks A Go-Go show is just for you. I'm here today to do a little bit of myth busting. I'm busting myths. I'm telling some truths. We're doing curved seams today. It's a Blocks A Go-Go show, and there's this understanding out there, I think, certainly among rookie quilters and even among more advanced quilters, that curved seams, it's like, ooh, curved seams. Oh, I don't know. I don't think I want to try that curved seam thing. It's easy. It just takes time. That's my official statement on curved seams. So I made these little pie and crust blocks with these templates, and we're going to make one more and we're going to sew it, so we have 4 of those. But first I'm going to show you about cutting, okay? So how to cut these things. Your template set, by the way, tells you all kinds of good information about how big to cut your squares. They're 6.5-inch squares. And so you get your safety glove on, and then you get a smaller rotary cutter. Usually your rotary cutter is pretty big, right? You're going to use something like that to do a lot of your strip cutting. But for this project, a smaller rotary cutter is better because it goes around the curve a little easier. So when we talk about pie and crust, this part is the pie. Let me move this out of the way. This is the pie because it looks like a pie, a little wedge of pie. I'm getting very hungry for pie, just letting you all know. I'm the crew. And this is the crust, okay? So the way we do it is we put our pie down first, our pie template, and it tells you which one is which. The black one is the pie and the red one is the crust, but I labeled it with tape just so I wouldn't get confused and forget which one was which. So I labeled that pie, and we're going to cut it out. All right, so put your hand down with your safety glove on, and using your small rotary cutter, you just cut around the edge, like so. And at the end, what you get is 2 pieces, and you've got your pie, and this is actually waste. This particular template has you use these two different templates to make this block. It's going to make sense in a minute. So for now, what you need to know is once you've cut your pie piece, this is waste. Put it in your scrap basket, use it for something else. You don't have to throw it away, but it's actually not going to be used for this project. So there's a really famous quilt show where she throws it over. That's an homage. So you've got your piece of pie. Now let's cut your piece of crust. Let's get a contrasting fabric. Great. Okay, that's also 6.5. And then we put down our crust piece. Crust goes in the corner because what we're doing is we're going to do the same cut, but we're using this piece, right? And the little pie piece will go away. Okay. And cut along the template there firmly with commitment. And when you're done, you have a little bit of that. That's okay. That happens. That'll go away in the seam allowance. So this goes away. This is what we don't need now. Okay, so that goes into our scrap basket. And we are using these 2 pieces together. I'm just going to clean up that little bit. This happens. Don't freak out. This is real quilt making, people. Sometimes you have little hanging chads. So now that we have our 2 pieces, we're going to pin. And that is the part of the curved seam piecing that takes time. And you need to watch very carefully because it's really important. You flip your right sides together. And this is like brain melt moment. Like, how is this going to fit with that? And the pie slice is a little bigger than the crust. And it's like, how does this all work? When you have a piece of fabric, the warp and the weft makes the fabric, that's how they weave it together. And when you cut across that warp and weft, you get a lot of stretch, you get bias, and that makes it really stretchy. So when you're putting a curved seam together, you really use that bias, and that's why the pieces don't totally match up, but they will when you sew them. The technique that I've learned is you fold each piece in half and do a little finger pressing. So you have the center, the true center, and do it on your piece of crust. Fold it and do your finger pressing so you know the center, and you match up your centers. I see the 2 little center marks that I made. I don't know if you can see them, but when you're doing this at home, you will be able to. And you put a pin right in the center, okay? Take a small bite with your pin. Don't pin a whole bunch of fabric, because the more you're pinning, gets crazy, the more off, millimeter by millimeter, your piece will be. Okay, so once you pin the center, you pin the sides. And this is where you just gotta trust it. You pin the sides and you match these sides together. You have to kind of really manhandle a curved seam. You really like manipulate the fabric, really pull it kind of this way and that. You won't hurt it, you know, you don't wanna fray it, but when you're pinning a curved seam, you go to the sides next and you just have to work it around. It looks like it will not work. It looks like this is never going to make anything pretty, but it will. So I would put a pin in both sides. Some people, and you can do, like I said, you can do all of this a lot of different ways, but some people will throw in an extra pin on the side like that, and then we'll get a good close-up of this, but you kind of pull your sides of fabric together like that, make them match up, and you're just scotching is what you're doing. You're scotching it together and really pulling it so it matches up. I've pinned one ahead of time. I did use, a fair amount of pins. You could probably take out a couple of these and still be okay. But pinning it together is really important, and that's what you get. You get kind of a ruffly looking thing on that side, but that's okay. It's gonna come out real smooth, okay? So let's sew. All right. Taking it over to the sewing machine. So important when you're doing curved seams and in many quilting projects, needle stop down. Put your sewing machine in the needle stop down position and lower your presser foot so it's got fabric to chew on as soon as the needle is going to go down. I don't recommend sewing over pins, so once you get that in place, pull that pin out, okay? Get it on your pin cushion. Your stiletto is going to be used, but have it in your right hand and start to sew. The more pins you have, the nicer it is as you go. Because what you have to do is really manipulate this fabric as you proceed along your seam and go slowly. Like I said, the key to a curved seam is patience. So as you go, you kind of have to take your time to smooth the fabric out, because you don't want to get you don't want to sew over the fabric and get a pucker or a pleat. And we're almost at the end. This is great. This stiletto comes in real handy at the very end because you need to hold that fabric in place. Take out your pin, really smoothing that out. Okay, we did it. Let's take a look. And we're done. Let's take it over to our ironing surface. I say ironing surface because you might not have an ironing board, but that's okay. You can get an ironing surface and it's the same thing. Okay, and then you set your seam as always. Give it some heat, right? Make it all happy and pretty. And then press toward the crust. You press out toward the crust when you're pressing this open, and magically, hopefully I did a good job, we'll see. Oh, I did, it's good. So then you press out. You don't want to smush it too much because with that curve, it's more fragile than another piece of patchwork. It all fits together. It is like magic. Curved seams are like magic. It doesn't look like it's gonna fit, but it does. I'm amazing. I'm getting hungry for that pie, but I just want to show you that once you have some of these curved seam blocks, the way you lay them out, it's like the world is your oyster. You start flipping things, you start turning them like this, and the effect that you get is really different, but the curved seam is great.
There you go, Mary.
Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
Gonna have a little bit of pie. That's a curved seam. See, it's not that bad. And I think that everyone should join us on Facebook and Twitter and go to heyquilty.com and check out the blog, because I'm going to talk more about curved seams and all the things we do here on the show. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Quilty is brought to you by APQS, handcrafted quilting machines. Aurifil Italian thread, perfectly suited for all your quilting projects. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Clothworks, inspiring creativity with art on fabric. Havel's Sewing, when you need to cut it close, choose Havel's. B&B, our fabrics, your lifestyle. Quiltology, the urban quilt space.